Hi, and thank you for joining me for this new series of training videos aimed at squared up end users. So unlike a lot of our training material, which is aimed squarely at SCOM administrators, this is a more simple overview of squared up and the user experience around it for end users. So let's crack on. And I thought, as many of you will probably be new to squared up, we'd start with some of the basics. What is squared up and what does it do? So essentially, it's an HTML5 web console and dashboarding solution on top of Microsoft System Center Operations Manager, or SCOM. The first key thing to emphasize is that Squared Up is a presentation layer only. So SCOM is doing all of the monitoring and all of the heavy lifting. Squared Up is simply a brand new visualization layer on top of SCOM. And it gives you fast, intuitive access to dashboards, drill downs, performance data, alerts, and a whole lot more. Part of it is that it allows you highly customizable data visualization for your SCOM data. So in other words, the ability to very easily build custom dashboards and so on to see your monitoring data the way you want it. And we'll take a look at how to do that later on in this series. Squared Up also has the ability to allow you to automatically discover and map your applications powered by SCOM. Squared Up is integrated with lots of tools you'll already be familiar with, whether that's Visio for diagrams and other visualizations, Microsoft Excel for performance data, or SharePoint for publishing out your dashboards to a wider audience. And as well as sitting on top of Microsoft SCOM, Squared Up is also able to dynamically pull in data from other data sources into your dashboards and drill downs. That might be OMS, also known as Azure Log Analytics, but also external sources, whether that's tools with web APIs like ServiceNow or Splunk, or data coming from tools based on SQL databases. So Service Manager is a good example there. Now, when thinking about Squared Up, it's important to emphasize that the question, can I monitor this with Squared Up, isn't really one that you should be asking. And just a reminder that SCOM is doing all of the actual monitoring for you. Squared Up is just a presentation layer on top of that. So if you are asking the question, can I monitor this with SCOM, then generally speaking, the answer is yes. SCOM is designed to be highly extensible and with the intention that you can monitor pretty much whatever you want right up and down the stack. So if you have got interest in that area, go and speak to your sort of SCOM administrator about that. And a sort of top tip for you is that there's a free PowerShell monitoring management pack available. And essentially this makes it much easier for you to get your own custom monitoring into SCOM because it's all based on PowerShell, which hopefully you're sort of familiar with and probably have a number of handy scripts already available to you. So a little tip there, make sure your SCOM administrator has that free management pack installed if you are interested in custom monitoring for your systems. So when we think about the type of questions that might come up in a monitoring context, alerts being too noisy, why do alerts keep reopening, alert thresholds being wrong, why am I getting alerts when I'm patching my servers, all those type of things, remember, those are SCOM issues, not Squared Up. SCOM's doing all of that for you, so again, go speak to your SCOM administrator with that. So when thinking about Squared Up, the type of questions to really keep in mind are, how can I access this with Squared Up, and or how can I display this with Squared Up? So hopefully that gives you a bit of helpful context around what Squared Up is. And here's what we're going to cover in these videos. The idea really is to show you around, introduce you to Squared Up and the user interface, how to use it, what benefits you can get from doing so, and hopefully also give you a few ideas as to what you can achieve using it. So we're going to cover a UI introduction to Squared Up. We're going to show you around drill downs, performance reporting, and actions. I'm going to give you an introduction to SCOM alerts and how those work within Squared Up. We're going to do a walkthrough of our application discovery and mapping feature, which we call VADA. I'm going to show you some example dashboards and visualizations, and also introduce you to how you build custom dashboards of your own. And we'll take a little deep dive into our Visio integration so that if you have got existing Visio diagrams and schematics, you'll see it's nice and easy to make those live with your SCOM data and pull that into Squared Up. All right, So let's get going with the first session. And our first session is really an introduction to the Squared Up user interface, a quick tour to help you find your way around. And what I'm going to cover in this session is the type of things you might find on a basic dashboard. I'm going to introduce you to the concept of open access dashboards, which is a way you can share your dashboards very widely and with a broader audience than just your immediate SCOM users. Going to point out where you can find our universal search to make it nice and easy for you to find the objects that you want within SCOM. Show you how you drill down into a server and the user interface around that, which includes an introduction to a concept in Squared Up called perspectives. Show you what monitored entity is and the information it gives you. Show you where to find performance data and how that ties into performance reporting with an export to Excel feature, and just point out where you can find maintenance mode and tasks. So before I dip into Squared Up live and in my demo lab, I just thought I would explain that in the context of a screenshot here. So what we're looking at is a server drill down in Squared Up, and it's one of our web servers, Web01. So first up, wherever you are in Squared Up, in the top right hand corner, you're going to find this universal search feature, which allows you to search through your entire SCOM environment to find either the objects you want or the Squared Up dashboards you need. These tabs that you see here, every time you drill down into an object, that's what we call perspectives. And as you can see, there's a number of different perspectives available on this server, Web01. And for every object you drill down into in SCOM, and using Squared Up, you're going to find certain perspectives. Firstly, monitored entity. A monitored entity is essentially what I would call a raw view of all the data that SCOM has for this particular object. And it can be very helpful in terms of navigating you around what SCOM is monitoring and how objects relate to one another. You'll also find a performance perspective, and that contains all of the performance data that SCOM has for this object. So in the screenshot here, we can see some of the performance data that SCOM has for this object, and we're surfacing the relevant IIS performance data. But in that performance perspective, you'll find all of the performance data that SCOM has. And then the third perspective I wanted to highlight is alerts. So for every object, the alerts perspective is going to show all of the alerts for that particular object. And there's those three perspectives. Now, in terms of some actions that you can take within the Squared Up UI, wherever you see performance data as you do here, you can click on that data to drill down to get into a dynamic performance reporting view. Up in the top right hand corner here, we also have some actions or tasks available to us. Firstly, maintenance mode allows you to put the server into maintenance mode, as you'd imagine. Task gives you access to SCOM tasks, so you can trigger those using that task button. And then you'll see in the top right there something that we call page level time frame. At the moment it's set to 12 hours, so you can change that time frame, and there within Squared Up you'll see longer term performance data. All right, so let's switch over to my demo lab now to see that in action. And let's just start here with a basic dashboard. So I've just kept things nice and simple here. It's not designed to be sort of too complex or too sophisticated. It's just a dashboard for my sales app servers. So firstly, up in the top left here, we have the status of the servers that are part of that sales app group. At the moment, we can see we've got one server in a warning state, SQL 04, and we can see why it's in a warning state. So it looks like we've got an issue with service pack compliance on there. Any of this data, as you'll see, I can click to drill down into. I'm not going to do that just now, but if I do want to take a closer look at what's going on SQL 04, I just click and drill down into there. Down below that, I've got what we call our dynamic table visualization, which really is showing us our sort of server KPIs. So at a glance information on this server, so on these servers rather. So the number of CPUs on each server, current CPU usage and current memory usage. And immediately actually I'm seeing an issue here because I should be seeing performance data for this server here, Web03. I'm not seeing any. I suspect we've got an issue with monitoring there as it's obviously not collecting performance data at the moment. Perhaps I'll go speak to our engineering teams about that. Up in the top right, we've got our alerts, and you can see we've just restricted the amount of alerts that we want to show on the dashboard to 5, but I can click that out to show all alerts. And again, I can close that down. And lastly, I've put onto this dashboard pre-disk space. Even in this day and age, you still hear anecdotally lots of stories about application performance issues or outages simply caused by servers running out of disk space. There's no excuse for that happening. Put your free disk space on a dashboard and keep an eye on it. Again, I've just restricted the amount of views that I can see here to 4. I don't need to keep an eye on all of them, just the 4 lowest here. And actually in this case, all of my servers really have got sort of plenty of disk space. Unprompted, I can actually see unexpected. We've got an issue on SQL 03. So that wasn't part of my demo script, something that's going on in our demo environment. But just to give you an example, I could click to drill down into that. I'm going to actually do it in a new tab. And let's take a look at what's going on SQL 03. So as you can see, we can click and we can drill down into there. We can start digging around to find out why that server's gone red. We can do the same for wherever we see performance data, as I mentioned. So again, I can click to drill down into there. Let me just do that within the context of a new tab. And there we are in our sort of performance reporting view that I'm going to come back to in more detail in just a moment. Now, I mentioned in my slideware introduction a concept called open access, which is the ability to share your squared up dashboards on a non-interactive basis much more widely. So I've made this dashboard available as open access already, and if I click there, I'm going to get taken to an open access version of that dashboard. So there it is, and what you'll notice here is that if I try to click on any of this data, try to drill down into it, I can't. This is just a static but live version of that dashboard that we were just looking at. So this will update every 60 seconds, so you'll always be looking at fresh data, but we have no ability to interact with it. So if you're wanting to push out your dashboards for just high-level visibility, that can be done using this open access feature. And if I right-click here, you may actually see there I've got the option to save image as. This is just a static bitmap image. All right, so that's open access. And I also sort of mentioned in my introduction this universal search option that we have here in the top right-hand corner. So using this, we can very easily find our way around our SCOM environment and really get from anywhere to anywhere. So for example, if I wanted to maybe look at the C drive on SQL 04, if I type that correctly, I can go straight to that, and I just select that and drill down. For example, the demo box that I'm doing this demo on is called Per01. So if I search for Per01, I can get straight to that Per01 server there. But you'll notice there's a number of other objects on Per01 which I can also sort of navigate to. So for example, the IIS server that's hosted on Per01, I can go straight to that if I want. Or I can go to Web01, which is the server that I showed in that slide introduction. So let's go there. We now get to what we call a drill down view within Squared Up. You'll recognize that hopefully from the screenshot. And this is Web01. So here are our various perspectives, which I showed on those slides. First off, we're looking at an IIS web server perspective. That means we're surfacing for you data relevant to looking at this in the context of IIS. But of course, as well as running IIS on Web01, it's also a Windows server. So we may want to switch over and look at this from that perspective. And you'll see here CPU, memory, network usage metrics, overview information on the health of our disks. And there's a whole bunch of different perspectives available to us. We've got a specialized one here for CPU usage, similarly for memory, and so on. So those are perspectives. And as I mentioned, on every object that we see, we'll find a perspective called monitored entity. So it doesn't look very exciting, but hopefully this is helpful for you in terms of understanding what SCOM is doing and some of the more complex elements of the SCOM model. So we can see, for example, all of the classes of which this object is a part, all of the properties that SCOM has for this object. We can now see very clearly all of the monitors that are running against this server and all of the rules that SCOM is running on this server. Any of these we can click to drill down and get more detail into. We can also see all of the children of this object. So for example, the C drive, the D drive, the web server roles, they're all children objects of this server, and also all of the parents. So in this case, all of the groups of which Web01 is a part. So you'll see it's part of our All Windows Computers group, for example, but you'll also see it's part of our order processing platform, which is one of our applications here at Squared Up. So that's monitored entity. I also mentioned this performance perspective that you get, which is showing you all performance data available for this object. And this is probably a good moment to point out that page level time frame that's available to us. So you'll see it's set here to 12 hours. So we're seeing this performance data over the last 12 hours, but I can change that and pull back instead the last 24 hours worth of data, or any of those other periods that you see there. This all comes from your SCOM data warehouse, where you've got access to typically up to a year's worth of performance data, depending on your retention periods. As I mentioned previously, wherever I do see performance data within Squared Up, I can click and drill down and get to a performance reporting type view. So let's just choose CPU here. And there's that performance reporting view. Now I can take that, that's a unique URL, and I can easily share that with a colleague if I want them to come in and see this same metric. Again, you've got access to those time frame periods here, but you've also got the ability to run comparisons. So I can click that compare button here, and if I wanted to compare this to just a single server, I can search through my SCOM environment, for example, to find Web02, part of the same group of servers, and you'll see there I've now got those, so I can easily view a side-by-side comparison. You can also do that for whole groups of servers. So as mentioned, Web01 is part of my Sales App Windows Servers group, and there's CPU usage across all of those servers. And this is some of the tremendous sort of power that exists within SCOM for you and its ability to collect and store this performance data. Again, just to point out, you've got access to those extended time frames, as you see there. So the last 30 days, last 3 months worth of data. We can interactively select if there are any periods of particular interest to us, such as there. And not only that, but we can one-click export this data into Excel. And you'll see that with this export button here in the top right-hand corner. Click to export. Hopefully down in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, you now see an Excel document's been downloaded. I'm going to click to open that. And let's just go to Excel. And there it is. So we've drawn the graph for you in Excel. We've put a link back to that exact view within Squared Up, and all of the raw data is available to you as well. So if you do want to maybe make a case that you need some new disk space provisioned, perform some forecasting or additional analysis, you can lean on all of those great features within Excel to do that. So very, very simple to now get real value from all of that long-term performance data you've got within SCOM. So I'm just going to back up a moment to my view of Web01. I'm actually going to do that using the back button in the browser. So I'm going to right click there and go back to my original view of Web01. And the last thing I wanted to point out here, we saw the page level time frame, which we'll just quickly show you in action again. there. All of that long-term data, we've got access to it within this view as well. And point out maintenance mode, so you can easily put this server into maintenance mode if you're planning on doing some work on it. And also SCOM tasks, so all of the tasks that are available to us via SCOM, available in Squared Up, and we can fire those quite simply using that button there. Alright, that covers everything that I wanted to show you in terms of a basic introduction to the Squared Up user interface. I hope that's been helpful for you. Okay, so in this next session, I wanted to give you a quick introduction to alerts within Squared Up. But before I give you a tour of Squared Up within my demo lab and addressing alerts in that context, I thought it might be helpful to really give you a quick, what I call a dummies guide to monitor versus rule alerts. This is really a kind of common SCOM problem, an area of confusion for non-expert SCOM users. It's not something that SCOM makes particularly straightforward or easy to understand. But it's something that we try and help you with within Squared Up. And really you've got these two key but different types of alerts, monitors and rules. So what is a monitor alert? Well, the important thing for you to know about monitor alerts is that they really shouldn't be closed by you. The intention of a monitor alert is when it's raised, is that it's flagging up something key for you that needs to be fixed. The idea is that you then go and fix the issue, and when the issue is resolved, the alert will close itself. So there's a big problem of people not really understanding the distinctions between monitor and rule alerts, closing monitor alerts when they shouldn't do, and of course the issue hasn't gone away. You've partially just lost visibility of what the issue is. So again, to emphasize that sort of very clearly, monitor alerts really shouldn't be closed. Go fix the issue, the alert will close itself. Monitor alerts are also sort of important in that they make your object turn red within SCOM and within Squared Up. So what is it that turns your dashboards red essentially? Well, it's monitor alerts going off. To try and help you with this sort of distinction, firstly in Squared Up we visualize them slightly differently. So you'll see on the right the icon for a monitor alert in Squared Up, and it's a solid icon. And to sort of help you with this problem as well, Squared Up warns you about closing these alerts to try and prevent you from doing so when you shouldn't. So the other type of key alert here are rule alerts, and I would suggest that you can think of these as being more like information alerts. And crucially, these don't make your objects go red, so these don't make your dashboards go red. And we've distinguished these in Squared Up with a slightly different icon, and you'll see that this is a non-solid icon that you see on the right here. And generally speaking, you're okay to close these alerts, and as such we don't warn you about closing them within Squared Up, and I'll show you that in action in our demo lab very shortly. Before I do switch over, I just wanted to give you a little guide to an alert drill down view within Squared Up. And I've got a screenshot here. I'm going to talk you through that, and then we'll look at that live in the lab environment. So first off, 4 hours ago, this is when the alert was raised, and you can just switch to view exactly the time if you want. On our left here, we've got what we call our hosting stack, and essentially we can see there the alert here in this case is being raised against our IIS application pool, and we can see where that sits in our hosting stack. So we've got our IIS application pool that is hosted on our IIS web server, and that in turn is hosted on our server LB01, and we can see where that sits and the health of those components on which this is hosted. Below there we've got a history of the alert, and we've also got company knowledge, and you'll see in this case we don't have any Squared Up specific company knowledge here, so there's nothing showing. Below there you've got your product knowledge, which comes from the management pack that generates this alert. And on the right here we've got really quite a powerful feature within Squared Up. If within your organization you're using the SCOM concept of distributed applications. So within SCOM, you have the ability to configure and map essentially your applications. Those are called distributed applications. We're going to look at those in another tutorial session. But if your organization have set those up, what we do is this alert lookup essentially. So we've got an IIS-10 application pool is unavailable alert. If you drop into here, is that important? SCOM doesn't make it easy for you necessarily to understand the context in which alerts are occurring and whether they're important. Well, here we're doing a lookup to see our affected applications, and I can see that, well, this component is part of our order processing app, so that immediately sort of suggests a degree of importance to me, but we can see the app itself is healthy, happily. But we now have a sort of understanding of the priority with which we might want to be addressing alerts if there are kind of key applications that are affected. So over here on the right, we've got the ability to edit company knowledge. So you can easily put in your own company or application or specific knowledge there. And then up in the top right-hand corner, we've got some buttons. So we can assign the alert to a specific owner. We can update the alert state, and we can reset the monitor that's raised the alert. So if for some reason perhaps we think this is a false positive, I might want to hit the reset monitor. That will then put this back in a healthy state. And obviously, if the problem persists, the monitor will fire again, and we'll get another alert on that. All right, let's now switch over to my demo lab to show you that in action. So I'm just going to go in my first tab here to a simple example of an alerts dashboard. So nothing too exciting here. It's some alerts on a dashboard. One thing that I want to point out is you'll see down the bottom that I've got closed alerts. So these are my new and open alerts, but you may find it helpful as well to surface closed alerts on your dashboard. So don't need to deal with these. But if I'm coming in the morning or at a shift changeover, it can be useful to have visibility of recently closed alerts, so you know not only what problems are occurring now, but maybe what problems have occurred recently, and that can be useful to know. So let's take a look at how we can address alerts very easily from within the context of an alert dashboard. So I'm going to start with this failed to connect to computer alert. And you'll notice here, it's that solid icon. So I know now that this is a monitor-based alert. So let me go to update the state. Nice and simple. And I'm going to go closed. And you'll see immediately I'm given a warning. And this warning is essentially what I just explained while we went through the slides. This is a monitor alert, which is affecting the object's health state and should not be closed manually. The alert will close automatically when the monitor returns to a healthy state. To force a reset of the monitor, use the reset action on the alert view. So always reminding you about that, trying to make that very clear to you and forcing you to say, okay, I understand this and I want to close the alert manually. And again, if you click that, you still have to sort of make a decision again and hit update. Now, I'm going to be a good user and not actually do that. So I shouldn't be going and closing that alert. I should be going and fixing the issue. So I'm not going to close it. So we've got a different type of alert here. We've got our non-solid icon. So this is a rule-based alert. So actually, let me click here to update state. I am going to close this. I'm going to assign this alert to me, and I'm going to put some comments here. And we'll just put closing for demo video. Nice simple explanation there. We'll hit update, and that alert is now closed. So nice and simple and straightforward. And obviously I could do the same here with my warning alerts. All right, so that's how we can address alerts from within the context of a dashboard. Now let's click and look at an alert in more detail. And we're going to come to that view that we just saw in the screenshot earlier. So let's look at that live. So there's the time raised. if I click on that, we can see the exact time and date. Here we've got the current state of the alert, and if I click on that, you'll see that I can update that. And I can also do that here by clicking on resolution state. So in this case, I'm going to acknowledge this alert. I'm going to assign it to myself. I'm going to put RS looking at this for demo. And I'm going to update that. There we go. And we can now see this alert has been assigned to me. There I am, RS. So let's explore some of the other UI around this. So here within our hosting stack, we can see the context of this. So failed to connect to computer, or where have we failed to connect to the computer? It's on SQL 03. And if I want, I can click there and get directly to SQL 03. So let me just open a new tab to show you that. Oh. And there it is. And it's actually the Agent Watchers group on SQL 03. If we go off to the right here, we'll see the affected applications. So what applications is this a part of? Well, my operations manager management group. And I can see that that's in a critical state, so some concern there. Looking a little bit down the page, we see the history of the alert. So the alert was raised 7 hours ago, and just a few seconds ago, I acknowledged this, and I put my comments there, RS looking at this for demo. So if anyone else comes in and takes a look at this alert, they're aware of the context and history of what's going on here. So is there any company knowledge here? Well, it looks like someone's put some demo comments in previously. And I'm going to add to that with some more demo comments. And let's just save that off. And that's now going to be added to our company knowledge here. So just looking up at the right here, you'll see that I can also assign an owner. In this case, I'm not going to do that because it's been assigned to me already. I can update that resolution state as I saw, or I can reset the monitor if appropriate. Let me just scroll down to show you that company knowledge is now saved back. Let's reset the monitor here. And as you'll see, we do our best to explain the circumstances to you. So the alert will be closed. If the issue still exists, the monitor will return to an unhealthy state and a new alert will be created. Okay, well that's what I want to do. I'm going to reset that there. I think that's a false positive alert perhaps. And there we go. We'll see that now goes from critical to healthy again. But as I say, if this issue persists, that's going to be re-evaluated. This will then go critical and a new alert will be raised. All right, so I hope that's been a helpful introduction to you on alerts within Squared Up. Okay, in this next video session, what I wanted to cover off was an introduction to application mapping within Squared Up. So within Squared Up, there's a very powerful feature which we call visual application discovery and analysis, or because we're big Star Wars fans, we call that VADR for short. And this allows you to automatically discover and map your applications using the SCOM agent, which is already sitting on your server. So I'm not going to go into anything sort of too deep dive here. This is an end user tutorial, so I just wanted to cover off the basics of how it works and what that means for you, and then how you can use it yourself. All right, so how does it work? Well, this is a point-in-time discovery, and it's carried out by the SCOM agent that hopefully is already sitting on your server, and that might be for either Windows or for Linux. And the discovery is essentially based on netstat data. So we're going to use the SCOM agent to pull back netstat data, which is going to give us the processes, the connections, and the ports, and Squared Up's going to do all the clever stuff to model that at the front end. What's also important about that discovery and mapping process is we've made it very easy for you to filter out what I call the noise. So netstat is by its nature quite noisy. You're likely to have an awful lot of processes running on your servers that aren't part of your application definition. And so to be able to turn that raw netstat data into something you can actually use to map your applications it's important that you sort of are able to filter that out, and I'll show you how that we've done that for you. And then the last part is being able to save that application back to SCOM, really, so that you're not just discovering and mapping the application, you're saving that, so you've got a definition of that going forward. And what does it mean that we've chosen to design and architect the tool this way? Well, a few things it means is that in terms of application mapping, the hard part really is already done. You as an organization have already gone through the difficult process of setting up SCOM, all of the infrastructure needed to run it, getting an agent on each of your servers and so on. That's the tricky part, and we're going to take advantage of that, of all that work that you've done to hopefully sort of deliver the magic of application mapping. What also this means, and the fact that it is point-in-time discovery, is this is very, very lightweight. It's non-invasive, and essentially there's no overhead. So they're not putting a big overhead either on the servers on which you're running the application discovery or on SCOM itself. So it's not continuous data collection, it's just point in time, no continuous data collection, no storage of that data. And that in turn means that this is safe to put into the hands of your application teams. You don't need to be a SCOM expert, far from it, to use this tool. Actually, what we want to do is move the burden of application discovery away from centralized teams like your SCOM administrator, who probably doesn't necessarily know that much about all the individual applications running in your environment, and put that discovery and mapping process in the hands of the teams that do know about those applications. Now, those teams probably don't know about SCOM. You don't need to with this tool, as I'll show you. And then just a little note that obviously being able to save that back to SCOM and defining your apps really gives you a lot of benefits going forward. Makes it very easy to build dashboards on top of those applications, to target alerts, for example, to specific teams, and also to pull in external data in the context of your applications. So before I drop into our demo lab to show you application discovery in action, I just wanted to give you a little tour of some of the UI around that, just based on a screenshot. So this is the type of view that you see within our application mapping tool. And let me just guide you through some of what you're seeing here. So firstly, up the top here, we're seeing what I would call our mapped connections. So in this case, HTTP sys and the IIS worker process, those are the connections that are on our map. And the IIS worker process, as we see here, is connecting through to our servers app01 and app02. I've also opened out and highlighted for you the fact that we've got a number of filtered connections. So these are filtered, so they are not shown on our map. We've deliberately chosen to exclude them. And the nature of those processes hopefully gives you an indication as to why we've excluded them. What we can see there is the SCOM monitoring agent. And also, for example, I think that's an Azure monitoring agent. Now, those processes are going to be running on every server in our environment. It's not part of a sort of specific application definition. It's not going to be helpful to see all of those connections, so we're excluding those from our map. What you can also see, slightly obscured by one of those boxes, but hopefully is a +2 for that HTTP sys connection. And that means we've got some discovered but as yet unopened upstream connections. So as you'll see when I do this live, we discover upstream connections, but we don't automatically open them. But when you click that +2, you can open those out. You'll see here we're surfacing the ports on which these processes are connecting. So that's nice and sort of straightforward. And then in terms of some action buttons that you have available to you, firstly, you can manage your global filters using that filters option. So that's perhaps typically something I would expect is best done by the SCOM admin. So those things like the SCOM agent, or maybe if you've got a backup service running on every one of your servers, hopefully your SCOM admin is going to do a good job of making sure those are all assigned to global filters, and that can be done using filters here. We've got a Save As button, which is going to allow us to save this as an application back to SCOM. And up in the top right here, we're currently in Discover mode, and we've got two other modes available to us as Vader. View, which is just allows us to very quickly view the current health states of the servers that are part of our application map, and analyze, which is a more detailed view of current health and performance data. And just one little thing to show you down in the bottom right is you've got some zoom and fit to screen options available to you. Before I go into the demo lab, there's one more thing that I wanted to point out to you, which is in discovery mode, you're essentially going to see two types of entities on your map. At the bottom there, we've got our rectangle. It's a very normal rectangle, right angle corners. And above it, we've got a rounded end rectangle. And there's important distinctions between the two. So let's start with SQL 04, the regular rectangle. So this regular rectangle visualization tells us firstly that, well, SQL 04 is monitored by SCOM. There's a SCOM agent on this endpoint. And as a result, we can run discovery from this. And also health and performance data should be available for that. I've put should be because obviously we're reliant on the fact that SCOM is in fact collecting that sort of performance data. But essentially where you see that rectangle visualization, it's being monitored by SCOM. You can run discovery and health and performance data is available. By contrast, this rounded end rectangle, well, this endpoint isn't being monitored by SCOM. SCOM doesn't know about it. And of course, that means there's no agent there. That means we can't run discovery from the endpoint. And similarly, there's not going to be any health and performance data available to us. Well, what I would point out as one additional thing is that if your application is indeed dependent on this endpoint, then you should consider including it in your monitoring strategy. So we may have discovered a couple of things here. This might be something that we should have installed the SCOM agent on and haven't done so already, and so it's picked up a sort of hole in our strategy in that respect. Or perhaps it might be an external web endpoint or something along those lines that your app has a dependency on. Well, if so, that can still be monitored by SCOM using transaction monitoring, so do think about including that in your application monitoring strategy. All right, so hopefully that's given you a good introduction. Let me now just switch over to my demo lab, and I'm going to run that live for you and talk you through it. So I'm just going to go to my home screen to start this next portion of the demo. And on that home screen, you'll see I've got the ability to map a new application. And just before I drop into this, let me show you one other place that you can commence your application discovery from, which is if I go to a drill down view. Here's my drill down view of my server web01. You'll see that one of my perspectives is app discovery. So I can launch app discovery from either there on a specific server or from here with this large plus button in my map my new application section. So I'm going to do that here, and you'll see first up, squared up opens out really a blank canvas to us. Now these are just suggestions here. We can change or remove any of these, but we're really just trying to put you in the sort of right context here. So we can build out our maps manually if we want. So for example, my front-end servers, I'm going to go to my trusty server web01, search through my SCOM environment to find that, and I'm going to put that on my map. Now I could continue building out this picture manually if I want to, but now I'm going to go over to discovery, automatic discovery. So I click, and discovery is now run on this server. SCOM agent fires that netstat task, and our map starts to build. Well, I'm not interested in this Windows Azure telemetry service, so first off I'm going to filter that out, and you can see that I can add that to my global filters, or I can just filter that on this node only. So filter it on this node only, it's now removed and it's been taken off my map. You'll see here that +2 that we saw in my screenshot, and that was my unopened incoming connection. So let's open those out, and we can see a couple of load balancers here, so F501 and LB01, and they've been put into their own distinct group or tier, so that's great. I can give that in turn its own name. Now let's go down the line to APO1 and APO2. We see our regular right-angled rectangle here, so SCOM knows about these servers. We've got a SCOM agent on them, we can run discovery. So let's run our discovery on those. And our map continues to build, and we've discovered an Oracle server here. So I'll call this my Oracle DB. That's obviously running on Linux, and I can run discovery on Linux if I want. I found a couple of SQL databases, so I'm actually going to put those into their own tier or group here. I'm going to call those my SQL DBs. Here I've got an unmonitored endpoint, as I mentioned. I'm actually going to remove that here. I'm not too interested in that today. And I've got a couple of external dependencies, so I'm going to keep these in their own group. And I recognize that EC2 address that's running in Amazon Web Services. Now, in the case of this particular application, it's a sales order processing app that we run. We need to have currency conversion as part of that, and we call that from an external service. So this is a good example of somewhere where SCOM can't monitor to this directly, in terms of we can't have a SCOM agent on here, but my app is dependent on this, and so I would want to include this in my monitoring strategy and probably get my SCOM admin to set up an external web transaction against that. So we've got my SQL DBs, my Oracle DB, and my unopened front-end connections. Open those out. I've discovered actually I don't just have Web 01 in my front-end servers. I've got Web 02 and Web 03. So I can run discovery on there. And let's open out those connections and see what's going on here. And let's also use this zoom capability that I pointed out down in the bottom right-hand corner. There it is. Let's do fit to screen. And there we've got a very nice picture of our application, and we've discovered that all in a matter of minutes. So I've got 2 load balancers at the front end, 3 web servers connecting through to 2 app servers, connecting through to my SQL databases, Oracle database, and some external endpoints. And you'll see all of those port connections are available to me. So very straightforward to build out your application mapping. And we remember that this is point in time discovery. So if, for example, this application has, let's say, maybe a batch job that runs overnight, well, that isn't going to display as part of our automatic discovery, because we're doing this in the day, and it's not going to run until overnight. Again, you can add that manually. So that actually is on this server. I think it's AK. No, maybe it is MB. There we go. There's the server that my batch job runs on. I'm going to pop that up there. I'm going to call that batch job overnight. And that actually connects into my app servers. So I'm just going to make that dependency there. And we've manually built out the full picture of our application. So to point out a couple of the other things that I showed you. Firstly, the ability, once we've mapped that out in full, to save that. And what we would suggest you do is click Save As and save it as a monitored application. So I'm just going to call this my demo app. And as you can see, we give you some nice clear guidance here as to what's happening. So it's going to allow you to save it as a new monitored application in SCOM. New management pack will be generated and downloaded. You then need to send this to your SCOM administrator, and he'll be able to import it into your SCOM environment for you. So to do that, you hit download, and hopefully you can see just down there in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, an XML file has been downloaded. That is that application definition ready to be sent on to your SCOM administrator. So a couple of other things before we finish. Just going to close that Save As view, come back to my map here. Let's just go into full screen mode to get a nice full picture here. We're in discovery mode at the moment, but we can go into view mode to quickly see the health state of the objects on this map, or into full-on analyze mode, and we can see not only the health states but also current live performance data, and there that is lighting up now. So you can see, for example, if we're load balancing successfully across the web tier, the app tier, where our issues are, why we've got a warning on SQL 04 and so on. And from there, you can drill down to explore further. But hopefully that gives you a good introduction to how you go about automatically discovering and mapping your applications using Squared Up. I hope that's been helpful for you all. Okay, let's go on to our next training session, which is an introduction to building custom dashboards in Squared Up. So before I go over to the demo lab to show you this hands-on in action, I thought I'd walk you through the various options available to you. In this session, I'm just going to do live demos of some of the more simple ones, but I thought it might be a good chance to give you an overview of some of the more complicated things that you can do, to give you some ideas or perhaps some questions for you to go and ask your SCOM admin to see if he can help you within your environment. So let's take them step by step. When we open out a new dashboard in Squared Up using the plus button, a blank canvas is drawn for us with a bunch of tiles available, and these tiles are the different visualizations available to us. The first bunch are pretty straightforward, so status, you've either got icons or nice large blocks for kind of high impact visualizations, and those are going to display the health states of your objects, so your applications, your groups, your servers, your disks, and so on. Nothing too complicated there. Alerts, again, pretty straightforward. Put your alerts on a dashboard, open alerts, closed alerts, and so on. Monitors can be a bit more interesting. This is useful if you're less interested in the overall state of a specific object, but in the health of individual monitors. So you're not worried about some kind of low-level alert which turns your server yellow or red. It's only if there's a specific issue with a specific monitor that you want that to see that on a dashboard, and you can do that using monitors. Dynamic table is what I would sort of think of as a KPI type visualization, an at a glance overview of the health of things like servers, disks, and so on. That can be sort of very, very useful, showing you CPU usage, memory usage, the number of CPUs on a given server, and so on. Visio we'll look at in more depth in another session, but that allows you to tie your SCOM data to your Visio diagrams to make those Visio diagrams live. Image is nice and straightforward, allows you to import any bitmap image into Squared Up and overlay the health of your SCOM objects on top of that. So the example you see here is a pretty classic one, a world map. And SLAs, again, very straightforward, uptime reporting based on the underlying capability to do that within SCOM. Web content is a little bit more special. This gives you the ability to insert either raw HTML into your dashboards or to pull in other web pages via an iframe. So that might be a preview of a website or web application you're monitoring, pulling in perhaps another monitoring tool. We've seen customers do that with New Relic, for example, and put those views alongside their SCOM data using Squared Up. Loads of options there. SQL allows you to query any arbitrary external SQL database and pull the results back into your Squared Up dashboards and drill downs in tabular or scalar number format. Performance is visualization of SCOM performance data, and you can do that either as line graph, sparkline, bar chart, or heat map, as is most appropriate. SCOM task is certainly a more advanced use case. This allows you to use the SCOM agent to pull on-demand data automatically into your drill down views. I'm not going to go into too much detail around that now. As I say, that's advanced use case, I would say. OMS allows you to pull in data from OMS, also known as Azure Log Analytics, and again display that in your dashboards and drill downs in either tabular or scalar number format. And very similar is our web API tile, but this actually allows you to pull data from any REST API. So great examples might be things like ServiceNow or Splunk, and again put that right alongside your SCOM monitoring data in either tabular or scalar number format. So with that, let's now sort of switch over to my demo lab and show you how to do some of the basics of building a custom dashboard. So I'm just going to switch over. There's my demo environment, and I've got it already opened out on a new dashboard. So we'll just call this simple dashboard. And the first tile I'm going to select is the status tile. And I'm going to choose the nice large block visualization available to me. And having done that, we're now taken into the scoping section. And this is key for building any dashboards, is what do you want to be on the dashboard, or in this case, to be on this section of the dashboard. Now we've got an advanced section here, which I'm going to leave out of today's demo and just focus on the two sort of bread and butter ones. List is very straightforward. This allows you to search through SCOM for the objects you want and essentially manually build a list of what you want to put onto the dashboard. So for example, server web 01, server web 02, I think we've got a web 03 as well. So we can just build that out manually. That's nice and simple. But I imagine a more common use case for you is going to be putting groups onto dashboards. So hopefully your SCOM administrator has ordered your SCOM environment nicely so you can target dashboards to groups. In our case, we've got a sales app and the Windows servers in our sales app. I've got that set up as a group, and there are those 7 servers that are part of that app. I can also sort this, so I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to sort it by health state and descending so that I'm surfacing any servers in warning or critical state, and that's sort of particularly useful when working with larger groups. I can arrange how I view the blocks, so I'm going to put 4 columns across my page. I'm going to make them a bit narrower, and I'm actually going to make the font size a little bit smaller as well. I've got some labeling options. I'll move past those for now and just show you the sub-label options. We're showing here the health state summary. So in other words, why is SQL 04 in a warning state? Well, it's because of a service pack issue on SQL 2014. Also quite useful here is the last state change. So how long this server's been in its current state. That might be quite useful as we see here, for example, SQL 03. Well, previously I was looking at SQL 03, it's green, everything's all good. Actually, it's only been healthy for 5 minutes, so presumably some incident has just occurred on SQL 03. I might be interested to go and investigate that. We'll leave that at health state summary for now. You can combine those with more advanced functionality, but I'm going to move on and put some alerts on my dashboard. So alerts, select the alerts tile, select group again, and it was my sales app Windows servers that I was after. So I search, find that group. I can filter these if I want, maybe remove informational and low priority alerts. I can change the time frame. I can put a limit to the number of alerts which is displayed. Let's change that to 4. And I can rearrange my columns. Let's just give you a simple example here and move time raised to come before the resolution state. And I'm going to pop in some column titles. Great, that's alerts. Let's continue onwards. And I like this dynamic table style visualization for server KPIs. So I'm going to do that. Find my group again. There we go. And hit done. And I've got a nice overview there. So I'm going to call that my server KPIs section. And let's have one more. We can see CPU and memory here. We can see our status. We can see our alerts. And I think there's one more kind of real bread and butter thing that we would always recommend putting on a dashboard, which is free disk space. And I think that's best visualized as a bar graph. So I'm going to choose my group here. There's that group I'm after. And next I'm asked to choose the performance metric that I want to show. So a nice tip here is if you're not sure of exactly the name of the metric you're after, in this box, if you just click the down cursor arrow, you'll see that we pull up and surface for you all of the metrics. And as you can see, there's absolutely tons of them that are available for these servers. Luckily, I know what mine is. I can just type it in there. Logical free space for my disks. There we go. And I've got the top N option here, so I don't want to see free disk space for all of them, maybe just the top 3 or 4, 3, 4 for example. And there we go, those are the ones I want to keep an eye on, just the ones with low disk space. No real issues on any of these servers, luckily. So that's all good, and I'm pretty much done. But we're dropping off down the bottom of the page a little bit here. So if I navigate over to the right of the screen, you'll see I've got a plus button which allows me to add a column here. And this is how I can start to play around with my dashboard layout. So I hit add column, like so. And I can also arrange those columns like that. think that's a bit more like it. And I can drag tiles around. So let's pop alerts over there. And let's also pop free disk space over there. And we'll just get rid of this blank tile here using the delete button. You'll see I've also got a button there where I can clone a section, so that can be pretty useful. But I'll stop building this out for now, and I'm going to hit publish. I won't add it to the navigation bar as it's just a demo. And publish, and there we go. That's ready to go. And the last thing I wanted to show you around building out your dashboards is how easy it is to make those available as open access, which, as we covered previously, is how you can share these dashboards among a much wider audience, whether or not those are SCOM users and so on. And we just click the share button to do that. I can put it in open access mode, and we clearly explain to you what that is. It's non-interactive, no authentication, no user license needed. And very often you might be sharing those in other web portals such as SharePoint. So here I'm going to choose the embeddable option. I hit generate. That's now ready. And if I hit preview, opening up in a new tab is going to be that open access dashboard. So that just has to build for this first time. That's now being prepared. And in just 1 second, we should have a non-interactive version of that dashboard. It's produced as a static image, but that is going to automatically update every 60 seconds. So unlike my interactive dashboard, I can't click to drill down into any of these. That's just a fixed image. And if I just go back to the dashboard that I was building in my other tab, obviously with these, I can click to drill down and to investigate what's going on. So I hope that's been a helpful introduction to you to building custom dashboards within Squared Up. There are lots more materials available to you online, but hopefully that gives you an idea as how you can get underway. Okay, this next training session is an introduction to Visio integration in Squared Up, showing you how you can easily tie your existing Visio diagrams to your SCOM monitoring data and bring those diagrams to life. So we'll take a quick walkthrough of that. And before I show you that live in action, I thought I'd walk you through the steps that are involved. So the first thing that we need is our SCOM object IDs, because that's what we need to tie to our Visio stencils. And Squared Up makes it very easy for you to get hold of those and pop those into Microsoft Excel. You then import that Excel file into your Visio document and tie or bind those object IDs to the correct stencil within Visio. From there, you can save it as an SVG file using native Visio functionality. It's then imported into Squared Up, and hey presto, you're done. That will then be live. So Squared Up to get your SCOM object IDs. They are pulled down into Excel, which you import into Visio, save the file as an SVG, and pop it back up into Squared Up. Simple as that. And hopefully what you'll see as part of this is that we have allowed you, if necessary, to kind of disconnect SCOM and Squared Up and the Visio document. So often SCOM and Squared Up administrator and access to object IDs and so on may be different from the person who has and who designed the Visio diagram and who knows how those things should be matched up. So what we're going to see is that you can disconnect those processes. You can easily send someone the correct Excel document. They can then work to bind it to Visio and send it back to be imported into Squared Up. But let's switch over and show you that in action. I just thought I'd start with this Visio diagram. It's obviously a very simple demo example, but the point here is it's just a totally normal Visio diagram with some normal Visio stencils, and that's what we want to make live. Now, how do we do that? Well, first we go over to Squared Up and we want to find our SCOM object IDs. We can do that using the status tile, and I'll just select icons here, and we can do it in the normal fashion, either manually populating a list or, if it's set up, pulling that from a group. So these are my sales app Windows servers. So there we go. There are those on a dashboard, and I'm just going to export that, and you'll see down in the bottom left corner of my screen that being exported into Excel. Now obviously if you're the person with the Visio diagram but you don't have the correct access to Squared Up, you can ask your SCOM or Squared Up administrator to do that for you. Once they've sent you that file, you can go over to your Visio diagram, you can select data, quick import, and we can go find that, which should be in my downloads folder. There it is, scope export, and let's pull that now into the Visio document. And we're done, nice and straightforward. Let me just close this off here and we'll see that data. And it's my SCOM object names, so I can see what server's what, and my object IDs. And to bind the two together, it's a simple case of grabbing that and dropping it into place on the appropriate server, or Visio stencil, I should say, really. So here we go. Drag those all into place, nice and easy. You'll see here some text being imported. That's Visio data graphics, so I'm actually going to remove that. This is nice and easy, but you'll find some more detailed tutorials, so I won't pause on this too long. There we go. That's all gone now, and our document is ready. So the last thing we need to do is now save this as an SVG file. So save as, select scalable vector graphics, make sure obviously the Visio data is included in the file when we save it, and we save, and I'm ready to go. So I can now either go back to Squared Up, or if appropriate, I could just send that file to my Squared Up administrator. It's then an easy job to select the Visio tile, drop the file into place, or click to upload. I'm going to click to upload. I'm going to go to quick access, and there it is, because I've just been working on it. And up it goes into Squared Up, and we're away. So it only takes a moment, and you can see we've got nice options, so you can rearrange the look of things. So in this diagram, I'd probably want to move those status icons off to the bottom right and make them a bit smaller. But we can also do cool things with color replace, replacing all the colors with the health status color, and often replacing all of them can cause issues. So you can just select single colors to replace if you want. And there we go, that now looks pretty cool. So let's hit done. Let's scroll up, let's publish that. It's just a demo, so let's not add it to the nav bar. We hit publish, and there we go. That Visio diagram, just in a matter of moments, has all been made live in Squared Up. And of course, it's all joined together. So we see we've got an issue with our database server. We click to drill down, and there we go, SQL 04. Let's see if we can find out what's going on with this. So I hope that's been a useful, quick introduction to how you make your Visio diagrams live within Squared Up.